Good morning. God, my hair's a bit funny today. All right, so I've been thinking a bit about these sessions that not getting many people turning up to them, and what I'm kind of wanting to do this year is to produce some shorter videos and have some sort of discussions and get people in from outside to have discussions about topics of interest. So it's like I don't want to spread my energy too thin, if I'm doing 3 sessions a week in the morning and then trying to do the other stuff as well. So I'm just going to think about it, really, about what's realistic. I might end up doing a session when I feel inspired by something, like say today. I feel kind of inspired by just addressing some of the stuff that's been going on in America. Just talking a bit about that. The American election and the whole thing of like integrity, politics and integrity. I'm going to look at the Roman Republic and also Coriolanus, which is a play by Shakespeare. Here's Ralph Fiennes in the lead role as Coriolanus. So, it's a story of a general who had to. He was called Coriolanus because he was leading his army into attacking the city of Coriolanus, and he went in the front door, the front sort of gates, and then they closed the gates behind him, so he was on his own in this city, and he just kind of basically fought his way out, he fought the whole city, and he got out, and Shakespeare says he struck Coriolanus like a planet, So anyway, so he's this kind of general, but in the play, he's asked to. Well, it's this tradition in Rome is that you had to, the general coming back from battle, would have to sort of show his wounds to the people, basically the kind of the mob, and get their approval, sort of thing. And he just thought this was like undignified, because he knew why he was doing what he was doing. He was doing it because of his own beliefs and stuff, and he ends up kind of putting people off. He ends up being critical of like the whole thing of like kind of having to kind of sort of kowtow to the mob, and he sort of sees it as undignified, and he gets banned from Rome, and then he goes off and he links up with Rome's enemy, and he leads an army against Rome, So it's like this is the consequence of messing around with people like that. But I think what it's interesting, what it does is there's a whole thing around. He had integrity, and it reminds me of the film that Al Pacino won an Oscar for, which was the Smell of a Woman, and Al Pacino plays this blind American general, a retired American general, who just has he's pretty horrible character, but he just has this really strong integrity, and this young guy who's looking after him ends up being well, he's in a college, you know, and the principal of the college is sort of saying, "Oh no, you don't need to, you know, have it." In a way, saying you don't need to have integrity. Just bend the rules, you know, just do what everybody else does. But you know, there's a really good scene where the general speaks up for integrity, you know, and so there's something about I want to talk about later, you know, about you know, kind of groups, and how, you know, we can have a sort of vested interest, and that comes to dominate everything, you know. So I think this has kind of been shown in America, you know, with the vested interests of like the kind of liberal establishment, but also and media, but also, you know, the vested interests of Trump and his supporters. So it's like people are just, they're not coming from a place of integrity and you know, honest discussion things. Everybody's trying to manipulate everything, and I think that is just really dangerous, you know, because well, you got this history of like, well, you had American Civil War, didn't you? But in the Roman Republic, they're often getting into war with themselves, you know, having civil wars and things. So yeah, so that's what I want to explore today. But first, let's do some body work and a bit of meditation. All right. So I'll begin just by rubbing your hands together. Backs of your hands. And just drumming with your fingers on top of your head. As you do this, being aware of your contact of your feet and the ground. And the sensations of your clothes on your skin. What you can hear. Just let everything just be there, everything you're experiencing. Just coming into your senses. Just receiving the world into a soft awareness. A little drumming on your forehead. And then just brushing off. Just gently brushing down your arms. And your chest. Slightly. Bit around your collarbone. Sometimes we just need to just be quite kind of gentle, really, in the way that we wake ourselves up. Sometimes the more, I've said this before loads of times, but the more gently, more subtly movement, the more powerful it can be. So we're just trying to almost suggest to our body that it wakes up a little bit. Shake your hands out and your feet. Okay, and just cradle your forehead in the palms of your hands. And it's as if you're turning away from the world. You don't need to be expressing anything to the world in your face or saying anything to the world. You can just let your vocal cords just relax. And it's as if you're kind of curving over so that you're almost going into a little bit of a fetal position. Being aware of the feeling of your breath on your wrists. Just giving your head to your hands to be held. Just give you a bit of a face, a bit of a wash with your hands. Okay. Bit of shaking. And just side to side. Just rotating your hips. Take a few deeper breaths. And just twisting to one side. The other. Okay. And take a seat. Just let yourself settle down into your posture. Get used to this new position that your body's in. So we're going to do the mindfulness of breathing this morning. The version where I'm just kind of aware of the detail in the breath from moment to moment. So what can you say is happening in this moment, and then the next moment, and the next moment, in terms of sensations and movement in the breath. Do you know what's happening in this moment, in the next moment? Mindfulness of breathing. Without stages. So in your own time, just bring your meditation to a close. Nice bit of cold tea. So I said a bit at the beginning about numbers of people turning up for these sessions. It's kind of relevant. It's kind of irrelevant as well. I mean, this is just an opportunity to get ideas out into the world, and the process whereby people cotton onto things is probably mysterious, and takes time. So one of my friends from the Manchester Buddhist Centre, well, he's not there now. He was around in the early 2000s. I worked in a cafe, Earth Cafe, which was a vegan cafe in the basement of the Buddhist Centre in Manchester in the UK, from something like 2002 to 2003, about nearly 2 years. And there was a guy called Heath Dawson who worked there. He was a Mancunian. And he's a great guy, And he decided that he was going to. What he wanted to do was to kind of. He had this myth about living more on the land, nature and things. And I remember him. He did a kind of a symbolic, I suppose, a symbolic kind of walk, from Manchester down to Somerset. And he went down Offers Dyke, which is like the along the mountains of Wales sort of thing. And he walked it. And I think it was quite difficult, actually. It was harder than he thought, But then of the years, so this is now 17 years ago. But what he'd done is, he set up Firefox bushcraft. So he's basically kind of been focusing his livelihood on living, kind of doing bushcraft, living outdoors. And he's got videos on YouTube. One of them, which is about how to make a kind of log fire out of a log. I think he's got about 200,000 views now. But I think it's taken a long time for that to happen. Maybe like, I don't know, about 8 years or something. So things gradually happen just over time. You just put the effort in, and in a way, you're not in charge of the results. So I'm just making this effort to get ideas out there into the world, and whether they catch on or not will be a question of time, really. So today's topic, I've wanted to talk about things that are relevant, just generally, but it really struck me watching the footage of the Trump supporters kind of piling into the US Senate, and I was a bit shocked this morning that I knew one woman had died yesterday, but apparently 4 people died in the some of them, the other 3 from medical conditions, whatever they were, I don't know. So I wanted to talk a bit about like the Roman Republic and some of the history of that. It's like I'm not massively informed about it, but it seems to say something about today. So I suppose, like, if we look back to 2,500 years ago, you had ancient Greece and you had ancient Rome, kind of getting going at about the same time. And I suppose the equivalent in the modern days, like Europe, Europe's the equivalent to ancient Greece, and America's the equivalent to Rome. So America's set up a republic. So the word republic, like Rome had a republic. So the word republic means thing of the people, res publica, thing of the people. So I just printed out something from Wikipedia about the Roman Republic. I'll just try and scan through it for relevant stuff. So it began with the overthrow of the Roman kingdom, traditionally dated to 509 BC, and ended in 27 BC with the establishment of the Roman Empire. So it's like 500 years. Its political organisation developed around the same time direct democracy did in ancient Greece, with collective and annual magistracies overseen by a senate. The top magistrates were the 2 consuls, who had an extensive range of executive, legislative, judicial, military, and religious powers. Even though a small number of powerful families, called gentes, monopolised the main magistracies, the Roman Republic is generally considered one of the earliest examples of representative democracy. So basically, you've got kind of powerful families at the top. And then, Rome got into wars with Carthage and basically conquered a lot of the Mediterranean. But it says at home, the Republic similar experienced a long streak of social and political crises, which ended in several violent civil wars. So America's had one civil war already. It says at first the conflict of the orders opposed the patricians. So the patricians are like the closed oligarchic elite. The conflict of the orders opposed the patricians, the closed oligarchic elite, to the far more numerous plebs, the people, who finally achieved political equality in several steps during 4th century BC. Later, the vast conquests of the Republic disrupted its society, as the immense influx of slaves they brought enriched the aristocracy, but ruined the peasantry and urban workers. Right. So basically, you've got a kind of a sort of a self-interested group there of the patricians, and then you've got the masses, the plebs, right? So there was a massive influx of slaves as they conquered a lot of Europe, and this ruined the peasantry and the urban workers. So you can see this is similar to today, right? So in the way that American business people, once China started to kind of, and countries in other countries where you had sort of cheap labour in the East, like Indonesia and places like that, once American businessmen start to think, oh, I don't have to pay American workers this amount. I could outsource to China and pay like a tenth of what I'm paying in labour costs. So this is what's happened in America, where it's the same thing, really. I mean, a self-interested group has outsourced its labour, and that's affected the it's affected the workers in America. It says, in order to solve this issue, several social reformers, known as the populares, tried to pass agrarian laws, but the Gracchi brothers, Saturnius and Claudius Pulcher, were all murdered by their opponents, the optimates, keepers of the traditional aristocratic order. So you've got kind of it says mass slavery was caused by 3 servile wars. The last of them was led by Spartacus. I'm Spartacus, a skillful gladiator who ravaged Italy and left Rome powerless until his defeat in 71 BC. So you've got sort of, I suppose what you got here is you've got power, haven't you? You've got Roman Empire, it's like power. American Empire is power, isn't it? It's like it's about maintaining power, and it has a kind of consequence. So I suppose America is trying to maintain power by outsourcing its labour in a way, and a lot of people have become very rich in that process. All the kind of Silicon Valley companies, really profiting from being able to outsource, like Apple, for instance. But the basic, the point of today really is to look at politics and integrity. So what I was struck by yesterday was that you had Trump, in urging his supporters to go and kind of protest at the Capitol. What I noticed was that the mayor of New York, not in New York, the mayor of Washington. Apparently, she said, "Oh no, we don't really need National Guard and other. We'll cope all right." And then But I did wonder about that. I mean, I don't know if this for certain, but the thought went through my head. Was there integrity there? Like, was she actually drawing something on? Like she wanted, maybe she wanted that to happen. In order for Trump to look bad. So you get a lot of this in politics, people trying to manipulate public opinion, and they're not, they're just not being honest about. I'm not saying that I know that this is the case with this woman, but it's just that it just happens a lot that people are trying to manipulate public opinion. And then on the other side, you've got, here's a picture of these guys in jackets are the Capitol Police, US Capitol Police, and they're just kind of like standing around here, watching what's happening. And apparently, some of them were just, in a way, maybe they were lacking integrity in that they were just going. Maybe some of them are Trump supporters, so they're kind of inviting, the Trump supporters in. So again, it's an example of like lack of integrity. So their job is they're not doing the job basically. What Mitch McConnell said was that something like, if we just allow this to happen. I mean, it happened the last election where there was there was kind of suspicion about the votes and stuff. There was an argument about the kind of truthfulness of the ballots and everything. And in the end, Biden went, "Oh no, we need to accept this." What Mitch McConnell said was that if every time we have an election, we have this wrangling about whether there's been a fraud or not. It's almost like we'll go into. It said something about a death spiral. Into a death spiral of democracy, So it's like nobody will ever be trusting anybody again, about whether whether the election's rigged, and the whole thing starts to become well, I mean, in the War of the Roses, which was in England in 300-400 years ago or something. When you read Shakespeare's plays about that, it was saying that it's like brother against brother against brother, and it was like even within people's families, it's like people were on different factions and stuff, and it's like the whole fabric of society just kind of broke down, into these and what happens is you end up with the original reasons why something started becomes so covered over by all the stuff that's happened since and accusations and this, that, and the other, that it's like you can't unpick it anymore, and nobody knows really why they're fighting for something or other. It becomes just you're part of one faction and you're against the other lot, and it's interesting that Henry VI was when all this was under whose reign all of this was happening, was he was kind of a little bit like he was kind of more religious. He wasn't really it wasn't a very kind of robust, kind of strong character, and so maybe that's why that all happened a lot as well. It's like, maybe he kind of lacked strength and moral integrity and stuff like that. I mean, what happened in Rome was that you ended up with it says in the last decades of the Republic were marked by the rise of great generals who exploited their military conquests and the factional situation in Rome to gain control of the political system. Marius between 105 and 86 BC, then Sulla, dominated in turn the Republic. Both used extraordinary powers to purge their opponents. These multiple tensions led to a series of civil wars, the first between the two generals, Julius Caesar and Pompey. Despite his victory and appointment as dictator for life, Caesar was murdered in 44 BC. Caesar's heir, Octavian, and his lieutenant, Mark Antony, defeated Caesar's assassins, Brutus and Cassius, in 42 BC, but then turned against each other. The final defeat of Mark Antony alongside his ally and lover Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, and the Senate's grant of extraordinary powers to Octavian as Augustus in 27 BC, which effectively made him the first Roman emperor. Thus ended the Republic. So, I mean, one of the things that I've thought about quite a lot is the origin of fascism was the image comes from ancient Rome, and what you had was like a bunch of sticks or something like that tied together. So that's that is the image for fascism. And it's like a group of people who are sort of tying themselves together against others. So the bonding around a particular set of views or cultural thing, and that seems to happen when people feel they haven't been looked after, by the world, or the political system, or something like So when Germany was sort of penalised heavily after the First World War, which led to it kind of going into economic ruin, that was like a power thing going. That was a power thing in a way. I mean, Germany was an upcoming power, industrial power. Like in the late 1800s, they had this sort of great exhibition, which is in Crystal Palace, I think, and it was like all the kind of industrial like nations were sort of showing off their, what they had and everything. And Britain had a massive amount of stuff there. The Industrial Revolution only started in Britain, but Germany had some amazing things there. And it's almost like the First World War was like, you could see it as convenient for Britain in that it kind of squashed Germany's upcoming power, but that kind of sort of power play in a way by the British Empire, in a way, sort of led to fascism in Germany, because this group that felt that they were sort of disenfranchised or something, they would sort of like bond together and push against the rest of the world. So you can't divorce that from the sort of self-interest going on, in self-interested groups prior to that, and I mean, if you go back to 1970s in Britain, apparently the 1970s was the most equal period, in terms of difference between the haves and the have-nots, in recent history, but then, in the 1980s, which came as it was a complete shock to me. I was at the university in the 1970s and 1980s. Margaret Thatcher came along, and it was a complete shock, because we'd just got used to an increasing amount of equality going on, and politics in student politics in the 70s was completely left wing. It's about 10% of students might be conservative, something like that. So it was a complete shock when Thatcher came along. But from that point, it was like a new, that Thatcher became a kind of a set in motion some values there, the values of like individualism and looking out for yourself, and if you wind forward to like Brexit, in a way, what you've got is for a large part of middle class Britain, middle class professional Britain, have just got so kind of used to having a lifestyle that's they're built up since the 1980s, through hard work and everything like that, but it's almost like that conditioning that has just been sort of become, maybe by them, like it does, taken for granted. It's like it's just taken for granted that we have this position within society where we're professionals, we charge good money for what we do, and then that becomes like the thing that is protected. But it used to be that the middle classes were like servants of society, and you'd have doctors becoming doctors out of vacation and teachers becoming teachers out of vacation and stuff like that. So I think, when you, it can be that we end up in a place in society which sort of suits us. We become accustomed to it, and we become used to having a particular salary and a particular lifestyle, and that becomes a kind of bit of an end in itself, and then we unconsciously defend it, So, when Brexit happened, lots of the people who wanted to remain, it was like not like they were really considering what the point of view of the Leave faction, why they were thinking in those terms, and a bit like the in Rome, with the I'll just read the fun bit again. Yeah, it says vast conquests of the Republic disrupted its societies. The immense influx of slaves they brought enriched the aristocracy, but ruined the peasantry and urban workers. So it's like, from a Buddhist point of view, if we ever sort of like stop thinking of everybody, loving kindness towards consideration towards everybody, then we're falling into some. It's gonna create harm. When we stop thinking about the other. And so to the extent that, like say in America, people. Liberal people in sort of liberal elites are speaking in a way which isn't sort of bringing in the perspective of Trump supporters, and they're just trying to conveniently ignore what their complaints are and stuff like that. Then it's going to lead to harm, Similarly, when when the mob, like the mob in the Capitol, stops thinking about the perspectives of the elites, both sides in a way have got values there that are positive, so that the liberal elites have got a value of like. Sort of trying to maintain some sort of order and democracy and things, but it's like, and there is a some things are more subtle, than you just need to just tear down the barricades or whatever it is. It's like. I mean, Mitch McConnell, was what he said was just really intelligent and measured. Like, yeah, you can't have this. If you let this, if you don't accept an election, and you at one time, and then you don't accept an election the next time round, you're setting a precedent for, in a way, for undermining the whole system. The whole democratic system. So, So in a way, it's like we all have a kind of individual, personal responsibility to, towards harmony. I mean, the Buddha talks about speech as being skillful speech leading to happiness for all beings is like truthful, it's affectionate, it's helpful, and it's harmonious. So it's like it's not just about truth. It's about speaking in a harmonious way. So I think in a way, when you have a you could say, I mean, Buddhism, people say, is Buddhism a religion or a philosophy? It's a soteriology. It's about overcoming suffering. But you could say that in a way, all like political systems and even like a materialist like worldview, non-religious materialistic worldview, they're all sort of soteriologies. They're all trying to solve the problem of life itself, of suffering, of happiness, and all that sort of stuff, and they're all like in competition with each other, so the thing is, it's like they all need a kind of critique, really, of do they actually work, and there's no kind of way in which we can really abnegate our responsibility, for the views that we have, So, they have consequences. So, if somebody's been a middle-class professional in Britain, who's developed their career from the 1980s onwards, and he's now doing very well, thank you very much, their actions have consequences, if they choose to not be aware of the world beyond their sphere of interest, and the fact that the way that the thing that they're trying to maintain is actually benefiting them quite a lot, So it's like they need to kind of be aware of that, That's the liberal side of things. On the sort of the other side of things, it's like complaining that, in a way, expecting to be sort of taken care of or something like that, or is a by like Trump supporters, without having to think about things, really, again, is like having the luxury of not having to think about things. It's not an option, you got to think. We've all got to think about things. We've all got to think about how we bring things together and how we construct a world together, that's intelligent, So yeah. So so we're all, in a way, and me included, we're all wanting to take shortcuts, we're all wanting to just get away with not having to be aware of various things, and and then when we do that, we eventually cause suffering for ourselves and for others. So maybe just finish with just say a little bit about Coriolanus, you know, the play by Shakespeare. I think I'd just like to read some of the play, actually, just to have some poetry in today's session. So, so this is a description of Coriolanus entering into the city of Coriolanus. For this last, before and in Corioli, let me say, I cannot speak him home. He stopped the flyers, so the people who were retreating, and by his rare example made the coward turn terror into sport, as weeds before a vessel under sail. So men obeyed and fell below his stem. So, you know, his sword, death stamp, where it did mark, it took. From face to foot, he was a thing of blood. Every motion was timed with dying cries. Alone he entered the mortal gate of the city, which he painted with shunless destiny. Aidless came off, and with a sudden reinforcement struck Corioli like a planet. Now all's his, when by and by the din of war gan pierce his ready sense, then straight his doubled spirit he requickened in what flesh was fatigue, and to the battle came he. So he came back from fatigue, where he did run reeking of the lives of men, as if 'twere a perpetual spoil, until we called both field and city ours. He never stood to ease his breath with panting. He didn't stop till everything was finished. So here's a kind of example of a hero going into the city of Coriolanus and getting trapped there on his own, and sort of keeping going until it got out again, just leaving this trail of sort of destruction behind him. So what happened was in the play, he was asked to show his wounds to the people, and he thought this was like demeaning, you know, and then he got banned from the city, you know, and then he came back with his enemies, with Rome's enemies' armies, and threatened the walls of the city, you know. And actually, it'd been a tragedy. He had a tragic end in that his mother came out to sort of plead that he'd sack Rome. So he doesn't sack Rome, and then the general on the other side treats him like a traitor, and then he has him killed. So, yeah. But there's some, you know, not to glorify war or anything like that, but there's something about a kind of a sort of integrity about Coriolanus, like he's you know, he has his integrity, and he keeps his integrity, and he's not going to bow to the mob, just because, and undermine his own integrity just because it would be convenient, and he gets banned, So yeah, so I think I just want to kind of use him as a bit of an example for all of us to, it might be hard to not go along with the group, at times, if it, especially if that group is like your peer group, from whom you get lots of support, and from whom you get lots of affirmation, and who kind of bolster up your belief system. But with whom you're probably tied into some sort of slightly unholy alliance, that is a kind of self-interest, I mean, it didn't do Coriolanus any good. I mean, it's integrity, but he kind of stands as a bit of a beacon for that. So he does kind of pass down through history as an example, So he sort of lives on in a way, So yeah, so it's only through individual examples that things move on. That you have Lincoln, you have Kennedy, you have people standing up for values and things, and they live on, these people, So it's like, maybe there's an invitation to move beyond our self-interest and try to sort of stand up for values, and in that way, kind of like help those values like live on, and get refreshed, and politics and integrity. Oh well, that's an hour and a half. I hope I've said everything I wanted to say. I think I've kicked it around a bit, really. Yeah. All right, that'll do for today. Great. Thanks very much. Bye.